Okay, so again, today's Shiur, we really want to thank our anonymous donor for sponsoring it in honor of our First Lady, Deborah Zohar, who's really looks out for our women's auxiliary for the Ezras Nashim. And the truth is, the entire Zohar family, our president and First Lady, kept our shul in check during this entire Corona time period, and we're happy to be coming out of it right now. This week's Parsha is unique in it that it has all of the Moadim, all of the Jewish holidays. A big part of it is Sefirat Haomer. We find ourselves in the middle of the days of Sefirat Haomer. We also find ourselves in the week of Lag BaOmer, smack in the middle of Sefirat Haomer. So there is a lot of things that are coming together. And I would like to touch on a few topics that I find to be fascinating. One about Sefirat Haomer, but I would like also to discuss a little bit of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, which is an unbelievable phenomenon, trying to understand what that is all about. Because if you think about it, the days of Sefiras Omer, the days of the counting of the Omer, are historically happy days for the Jewish people. They're supposed to be days. These are the days that we left Mitzrayim, we got the man, we crossed Yam Suf, we beat Amalek, we did all of the amazing accomplishments of leaving Mitzrayim until finally we reached the peak of Matan Torah, of receiving the Torah at Har Sinai on the day of Shavuos. And the mitzvah was given to us to count the Omer, to remember. We have to understand why was the mitzvah given to us to count if it's counting in anticipation of Matan Torah, like the Sefer HaChinuch says. So then it should be counting down, because whenever you're counting in anticipation, you're counting down. Why is it counting up? We're counting from something, not towards something. We have to understand that if what is the Sefiras Omer all about, right? And if these are the days of counting towards Matan Torah, we know that eventually they turned into days of sorrow, into days of no music, or what's called sphera music, which is music which is supposed to be a little bit more soul, more heart, a cappella, none of the joyous lebedik, because we're supposed to be more serious in our preparation towards Matan Torah, but also remembering the loss of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, of the students of Rabbi Akiva that all perished. Why? Mipnei shelo nagu kavod zeh b'zeh, because they weren't knowing kavod and respect to one another. First of all, where do we find that somebody who's not knowing kavod zeh lazeh is chayev misa? Why were they killed? Why were they wiped out? Okay, so they weren't nice. Unfortunately, we're not so nice nowadays, right? Does that mean chayev misa? So what does that mean? And on top of that, even if they were chayev misa, okay, they were chayev misa, they did something inappropriate. Unfortunately, there were many tragedies for the Jewish people throughout Jewish history. We don't find that we've accepted upon ourselves that unique time period becomes a time period of mourning with similar halachos to the halachos of the 3 weeks and of the 9 days, that you're not supposed to have music, you're not supposed to shave, you're not supposed to have weddings. Those are all minhagi avelis, which are normally correlated and connected to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. And in fact, if we did have any other tragedies, like the destructions, like the Xeris of Tach and Tat, and the destruction of the communities of Shum, of Worms, and Shapiro, we say kinos for those tragedies on Tisha B'Av. We remember tragedies that happened. We say special kinos for the Holocaust on Tisha B'Av. If there's a time of tragedy in the Jewish calendar, unfortunately, the Jews, we've been around for so long. If we were to commemorate every tragedy on the calendar date that when it happened, the entire year could be no music and no weddings. And because unfortunately, there are different dates in Jewish history where we've experienced different tragedies. So we have to understand what makes this time period, which we do commemorate the loss of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. What did we lose, and why is it a very similar mourning as it is when we lose the Beis Hamikdash? So in understanding Sefiras Omer, first we have to understand that these are days in which we are counting in anticipation towards Matan Torah. But the counting in anticipation towards Matan Torah is not just that we're going to receive it as a gift. When do we count down? We count down The kids are now, even though they just started school because of this past crazy year, but they're already starting to count down, well, when is summer camp, right? When are we going to finish school? So then they're counting how many days are left to school. Or when you're counting, somebody's coming over, we're going to get a big gift in such and such days, I'm going to get this. In 1 week, in 6 days, in 5 days, just 3 days left to the wedding, right? You're waiting for a moment to happen. When do we count up? We count up not when we're waiting for something to happen to us, but when we ourselves are working towards reaching a specific goal. It's the process of reaching that goal, not that the goal will come from the outside, but I need to earn it. Like the best example is when I'm on a 30-day diet. So I'm already 10 days into the diet, 12 days in, 15 days into my workout routine, right? I took upon myself that every day I'm gonna work out and I'm gonna lose weight and I'm gonna get fit. All those things, it's like I've been consistent for 15 days to get to this highlight. So the consistency and the 30 days, I'm counting, and I'll tell my friends, I've been doing this already for 15 days straight, for 20 days, for 30 days. Then I'm counting up, because it's not about receiving something from the outside, but going through a transformation myself. That's why the counting is counting up and not counting down. We're not getting to be connected to Torah, to values, is not something that happens to us. It's something that we become. It's something that we need to work at to be able to reach it and to be able to achieve it. And that's what Sefirat Haomer is all about, is building ourselves up. Now, why is it called Sefirat Haomer? Why isn't it Sefirat Torah? Because there's something from the Omer itself that teaches us that. The Omer, first of all, the word Omer means, there's 3 different meanings to the word Omer. First of all, it's a measurement. Omer lagulgolas, it's Asirius Eifa, it's 1/10 of an Eifa. It's a measurement the size of an Omer. So why is the carbon named the measurement? We have a carbon chatas, a carbon ola, a carbon toda this week's parsha. We don't have a carbon of an ounce. It's a measurement, but it's a measurement. We also have the word me'amer, collecting. It's one of the lametes melachos, comes from the word omer. We also have the word of misuse. It says by Isha Sifas Toar, al titamer ba, don't misuse her. You can't, she's going back home, she's got to go back home. If she's staying here, you have to marry her. The word Omer comes specifically after, and the mitzvah of the Omer comes specifically after we enter Eretz Yisrael. Because when is the first time we have the Omer in the Torah? It's really when we receive the man. During these days between Pesach and Shavuos, we received the man from Hashem. It was here to build our trust and our emunah, belief in Hashem, that He runs the world. He gives us the food every single day. Now, the moment we go into Eretz Yisrael, we might forget that, because I'm a businessman. I signed some deals. I closed a big deal. I'm the one who's able to move it. I planted the seeds on the ground, and look, it grew. I harvested it. I did it. I'm the one who figured out the new startup and the new high tech and the new technology. So I'm the one who is the source of my parnasa. There is a fear that will happen the moment we leave the desert and we enter Eretz Yisrael. So Hashem says, where the man ends, where the lesson of the man ends, that's where the lesson of the carbon Omer begins, because the man is the size of an Omer, and the carbon Omer continues the same word and the same lesson. That's why they ate the man. Do you know until when they ate the man? This is fascinating. Most people don't know this. They ate the man. The man stopped when who was nifter? When Moshe Rabbeinu was nifter. When was he nifter? On Zayin Adar. Says the Gemara in Kedushin that they ate the leftover man. It did not rot. It didn't spoil. And they ate it until they entered Eretz Yisrael. And even when they entered Eretz Yisrael, they were not allowed to eat from the harvest, because it's chadash. Until you bring the carbon Omer, which is on the 2nd day of Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chadash. In fact, that first year on Pesach, they ate man. They didn't eat regular matzah. They weren't allowed to make matzah from the new grains and crop that they had in Eretz Yisrael. And then on Tes Zayin Nisan, when they were makriv the carbon Haomer, that's when they stopped eating the Omer lagulgolas, the Omer of the man. It's the continuation of the same lesson. The lesson that reminds us that when you are collecting, what Omer means, when you're collecting everything that you've made and that you've earned, Don't misuse it. Al titamer, but don't misuse it by thinking it's yours, so therefore you could use it for whatever you want. Bring the carbon of Omer. Remember that this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he's the one who sustains you. When we internalize that lesson, that's why the whole nation brings the carbon Omer. B'kol Rash Gadol, everyone comes and to sees how they harvest it, and then they count. They count to the Omer to remember the lesson of the man. And that is how we will prepare ourselves towards Matan Torah. How do I actually, what's my 30-day challenge? What's my 49-day challenge? It's am I internalizing this lesson of the Omer? Do I see that Hashem is running the world and running my life in the physical and in the spiritual? That's the avoda of Yemei HaOmer, to really internalize and understand that Hashem runs this world. Not just in the physical, definitely in the physical. He's running all of the world politics, all of the corona, all of the markets, all of the real estate, everything. Every aspect of our life Hashem is running, but also in the spiritual sense, in our ability to learn, to understand, to comprehend. Hashem runs that. And this is really where the days of the Omer had such great potential. They have the potential of bringing us out of Mitzrayim to Matan Torah, and they have the potential when we are in the time of destruction that we could achieve such great heights and we could bring Mashiach. And you know who understood that? It was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, in his ability of Torah, was able to bring back Mashiach after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. He had 24,000 Talmidim that were all Tanaim. And Rabbi Akiva taught them the secrets of the crowns of the letters, not just the letters themselves, but the crowns of the letters. Tanaim, full midrashim and agaritas and brisos about the crowns and how we could be mamlich Hashem in this world through the crowns of the letters. Rabbi Akiva's life, by the way, he lived 120 years, just like Moshe Rabbeinu. And his life was divided into three. The first 40, he didn't learn anything. The second 40, that's when he developed himself as a Talmud, as a Talmud Chacham, and the last 40 years is really when he was trying to bring Mashiach. And this was 50 years after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. And in those 50 years, Rabbi Akiva was working, in the last 40 years of his life, he was working around the clock of how could we rebuild Yerushalayim and Am Yisrael and the Beis HaMikdash through all of the great secrets of the Torah. And his Talmidim were on a very, very high level. Tanaim that deserved to be in the Gemara, in the Mishnah. And he had a Talmud who was a great warrior and a great Talmud Chacham. And his name was Bar Kaziva. Bar Kaziva is Bar Kochva, but he's called Bar Kaziva in the Gemara because he was Me'achzev. Me'achzev means that the potential was there. And the way the Rambam brings this down, he codifies it in Halacha. He says that Rabbi Akiva and Rov Chachmei Yisrael believed that he was Melech HaMashiach, which means that he was Melech HaMashiach. The potential was that Mashiach could have been brought in the days of Rabbi Akiva. The Torah that was being taught was the Torah of the Nistar as well, that could have been revealed, and that would have brought the third Beis HaMikdash and finished the Golus entirely. However, as all of our exiles, they happen because of Tsarus Ayin. They happen because of our narrow eyesight. The destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash was because of Sinas Chinam. There is a destruction of the potential of the third Beis HaMikdash because of Shalonagu Kavod Zeh Bazeh, that they weren't knowing kavod in one another. They're all great rabbis. Unfortunately, we sometimes see that there's machlokas between rabbis. Sometimes you could see machlokas between rabbis that have kavod zeh bazeh, that they disagree fierely. I disagree with your mahalach, but I still respect. I respect the other person. I'm still able to talk to him. I'm able to stand up for him, but I'm able to disagree with it. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagreed, those two Batei Medrash. But Beis Hillel used to always say the words of Beis Shammai before they quoted themselves. They used to explain what Beis Shammai said before they said their pshat. And that's why, by the way, halacha is Beis Hillel. And we know that they used to marry one another. But then there are machlokesim that are cloaked in the machlokes l'shem shamayim, cloak, as if it's an argument for the sake of heaven, but we see what happens on the ground. where the rabbis are against one another. Their talmidim, which shaloshim shukol tzarchon, that did not get the right chinuch, are the ones who get into fights, and there's lack of kavod between talmidei chachamim, and that's what brings to destruction. That is shalonagu kavod zeh b'zeh. The reason why we have minhagei avelus during Sefirat Haomer, like in the days of the 3 weeks, because during Sefirat Haomer, we had the potential of the third Beis Hamikdash. What we are mourning is not just the death of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. For that, whenever there's a tragedy, we have Tisha B'Av. We are mourning that there was a potential for the third Beis Hamikdash to have been built, and it was destroyed. Why? Shalonagu kavod zeh b'zeh. Because they weren't respecting one another. And we have to stop and look at where we are. We want to be ready for Matan Torah, so we're saying, yes, I believe everything is from Hashem. I believe that Hashem runs the world. Besides, when it comes to another Jew that has a different opinion from me, if he has a different opinion than me, he's nothing. I'm going to erase him. I'm going to show him this. We can't even build a coalition and have Jews sit together in one party because everyone is shalonagu kavod zeh b'zeh. We don't want to be poseach peh, but we want to give a bracha for ourselves that we should be zochet to see the greatness of Jews around the world, of Jews around us, Jews that have different opinions than us, but yet are an integral part of Am Yisrael. These days of Sefirat Haomer are days of great potential. The greater the potential is, the greater the fall is if we don't live up to that potential. These are days where Am Yisrael was able to leave Mitzrayim, the Gullus, and to rise to the peak within 50 days, and they're already at the top of the world. They received the Torah. They're godly-like. These are the days that have the potential, if we're in Gullus, if we're stuck, our personal Gullus, our national Gullus, we're able to get out of this Gullus and to reach the peak of standing at the footsteps of our Sinai, of Moshe Rabbeinu will greet us once again, Yemos HaMashiach. This was what Rabbi Akiva understood, and he was able to tap into it, and the process was there. The process was there. But then, if we're not ready as a nation, if we don't know how to respect one another, if we don't know how to be mechabed one another, we could be talmidei chachamim, we could be tzaddikim, but if we don't know how to respect people who have different opinions than us in Torah, so then lo nagu kavod zeh b'zeh brings to the destruction. And the reason why this destruction is so great, because it's not just the destruction of the people, it's the destruction of the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. And we had to go into a deeper gullus after the Bar Kochva revolt. We had to go into a much deeper gullus and a deeper exile that we only were able to emerge from it 1,900 years later. And we're only able to start that process of bringing it back right now in our generation. And the last thing, and there's Torah learning like never before, and there's more and more Talmidei Chachamim, and the Torah's Hanistar is starting to be revealed again in our generation, the Ariyah Kadosh, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. That Torah is starting to be revealed, whether we understand it or not. It's out there. All that's left is for us to be Noei Kavod Zeh B'Zeh. That's the only thing that's missing. That was the last piece. And if we want to see that Geula in our lifetime, we need to make sure that we internalize the lesson of the Omer, which is the lesson of the Man, Emunah and Hashem, but internalize the lesson of Talmidei Rabbi Akiva to be Noei Kavod Zeh B'Zeh, to honor one another, to respect one another. And then we'll be Zochet to see Binyan Beis HaMikdash, B'mher V'Yameinu, B'Karov, Mamish. Thank you so much. Real pleasure being here with you guys.